Hello, my loves. I am so excited to share this Happy Hormones method with you guys. This has truly been such life-changing information for myself and my clients to really find so much food freedom. What I start out with is the weirdly simple thing, balancing blood sugar, that was missing piece for me. So it's the first step in naturally supporting sex hormones and easing PMS, PCOS, fibroids, and endometriosis. When you stabilize blood sugar and build muscle, your body composition starts to shift in ways that diet never could. And when you master your mind, minerals, and macros, you finally feel free, living in balance without food rules holding you back. So let's get into it. So I'm going to first go through the 5 foundational aspects of the Happy Hormones method. The first one is calories. And I want you to know that calories are not the most important thing, but they are an aspect. So you want to ensure you are not too far off from your maintenance calories or the amount of food needed to sustain body processes over time and prevent muscle loss. We know low-calorie diets don't work well for women, especially those with hormonal imbalances. And if weight loss is your goal, I don't want you to jump straight to calories, but first focus on the principles outlined in this ebook. So the types of calories that we choose also make up, also impact us differently through different inflammatory pathways, through how we digest our food, through how we feel after we eat the food, so many different things. So I want you to take a weekly average approach to start by seeing how many calories you do consume throughout the week and just getting some baseline information. Consistency is really the goal to help your body feel a sense of safety. The body loves consistency and loves safety. So just like with sleep, with exercise, I want you to think of calories as something that you're gaining some baseline information. If you have never tracked calories and maintained a consistent calorie intake, then just getting into that routine of eating consistently is your first step. Okay. What I do want you to also be thinking of next is macronutrients. That's going to be a big aspect of this first part. So going too low in carbohydrates for too long can be damaging to thyroid health. Plus, it is just not sustainable for most of us. A moderate carbohydrate diet is considered to be about 100 to 200 grams per day. Okay, and again, the types of carbs will make a difference in how does your body process them, what type of inflammation reaction are you going to have. So I want you to experiment to better determine the best carbohydrate range for you based on how you feel, but also your medical history, right? If you, like I said, if you've had thyroid issues, then you want to be a little bit more cautious of going too low carb. If you haven't, you might be able to experiment with some lower carb and actually feel really good. Um, the type and timing of carbs can also impact blood sugar differently, which we'll talk a lot more about in future sections. Protein and fat intake should be in every meal to help regulate satiety and decrease cravings from lowering your carb intake. We're also going to talk a ton more about protein and fat. Okay, so carbohydrate amount and timing can make a difference in how you feel, as well as the time in your menstrual cycle and how active you are. So, general rule of thumb, the more active you are, the more carbs your body will be utilizing. But I still sometimes see people kind of overcompensate and think they need a lot more carbs, or they just have a lot higher appetite and they don't really know how to manage that. So that's some of the principles we will also be talking about. Okay. Micros or micronutrients are different than macronutrients. I think of macronutrients kind of as the building blocks of the body. Okay, like they're the bricks. The micronutrients are that glue that holds the bricks together. Okay, micronutrients fuel a lot of different enzymatic processes in the body, fuel energy production in cells, so many different things. So, 3 foundations for optimizing our nutrient status. And truly, 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 I started with these things and they have taken me, I've really used them so much in the last 5 years. And I still think there is a little bit more of a personalized approach to nutrients, but you're going to learn from this entire book how to choose supplements that work for you and when you might want to look to test it. Okay, so I want you to start with taking a good quality multivitamin. I love the Pure Encapsulations brand. There are many others. Just want to make sure it has a good variety of nutrients and they are in the methylated form. So that might be something to message me quickly and ask me about. I'm happy to answer that type of a question, but I love the Pure Encapsulations Women's Nutrients. That one also comes in a big container, so you can buy it once and it lasts you a really long time. The serving size is 3. You only have to take 1 or 2. That's what I usually recommend. Then also, we want to check out our vitamin D levels and see where that is at. Just because we have a low vitamin D level doesn't necessarily mean we need to take a ton more vitamin D, actually. Like, I don't want you to overdo it and take 1,000 IUs, but it tells me that your body is depleted. It tells me your body is more likely to be inflamed, depleted. Your hormones are probably suffering from that. Okay, so we want to make sure to have this information. It's a really low cost thing that you can be looking at over time and checking out. If you are only doing your annual physical with your provider, which I know many of my clients, that's all the labs they're getting. We really want vitamin D to be on there. As you'll learn, vitamin A and vitamin D work together, other fat-soluble nutrients work together. So we want to see all of those come up along with your vitamin D. Okay. Other tests I do are hair tissue mineral analysis and iodine, which we will not be talking much about in this ebook. The next one is to eat your retinol, the bioavailable form of vitamin A. If you have hormone-related symptoms, you likely need more retinol. I recommend beef liver capsules from Allergy Research Group. Also, eggs and organic dairy contain small amounts of retinol. You'll learn more about this nutrient at the end of the ebook. I have a whole page that goes into how much retinol you can get. But I also love cod liver oil supplements. Liver just happens to have a little bit more other nutrients in it, like copper and zinc and iron, where cod liver oil is mostly vitamin A and omega-3s. Okay, the next micronutrient of importance is potassium. Potassium you have to get through food as well as drinks. There's some drinks like coconut water that have it, but you cannot really do a high supplement of potassium, but it's a really important mineral for hormone health and thyroid health and adrenal health. So what you can do is you can use Chronometer.com. Some other tracking apps, like my app too, the Unfiltered Nourishment app, has potassium on there if you're doing tracking. But if you're not in there, Chronometer is a good free site that you can go and just check out, put in a couple days worth of your food and see where your potassium intake is at. Okay, so I recommend at least 4,000 milligrams coming from food and drinks, as well as supplements. But again, you can only really get about 500 milligrams a day from supplements. So coconut water, aloe vera juice, sweet potatoes, dairy, fruits and vegetables, those are all really good sources of potassium. I also do have a list that I can send you if you want some more information on potassium. We actually don't go into that a whole lot in this book because we focus a lot more on blood sugar. So lastly, some supplements specifically related to blood sugar and insulin resistance, which if you did want to test to see if you have insulin resistance, you can ask your doctor to run a fasting insulin, or you can go through me and we can get that ordered. You can also see blood sugar abnormalities in your A1C, but that is just a little bit more uncommon place to see it, usually early in life. That usually happens a little bit later in life, but I have had clients who I was very surprised had a higher A1C than I thought, as well as your fasting insulin, but that one can change a little bit more often. You can also look at a continuous glucose monitor. Okay, so myo-inositol and D-chiro-inositol. These are both different types of this B vitamin inositol that have been studied in a specific ratio to really help with blood sugar, especially in those with PCOS. It can also help with ovulation frequency. It can be taken actually instead of metformin or even alongside metformin. Metformin is a medication that for some people is super effective and helpful, but for others causes a lot of GI distress, so they can't take it. Yeah, so I prefer the brand Ovasitol, which I have a little bit of info on my website. I have a blog all about Ovasitol. Okay, so the next most important aspect of our foundations is our relationship with food. So the goal of this ebook is to help you keep a mindset of abundance around food. We are not striving for perfection. There is tons of science to back up the fact that if we think about food too much, especially in a negative and restrictive way, this can increase cortisol levels, and cortisol levels can increase blood sugar, okay? So we want to make sure we are finding this healthy balance where we are learning about food, we're gaining self-awareness, we're gaining new understanding, new insights, but we're not feeling overly restricted, okay? You will know when you get to a point where you're ready to do something that for others might appear more restrictive, but for you, it just feels like the next step in your healing journey. Okay, so really tuning into your intuitive guidance and how you are feeling and taking things one step at a time. So shifting to gradual, realistic changes with a focus on self-love and self-care can be so life-changing. It's truly, 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 I believe that. A few resources that have helped me with this have included the Higher Self app, which I'm going to talk a little bit about subconscious reprogramming, and then the intuitive eating workbook, or there's also a chapter book about intuitive eating that has been helpful for me also to just gain a different perspective from just thinking about the numbers and the data and all of that, which is still important. And the last important foundation is using more whole foods in our eating pattern. So committing to shopping and preparing your meals can truly be half the battle. If you have all of this information, but you're continuing to eat out frequently, skip meals frequently, not put your time and energy into buying and preparing food, then you're not putting that information to use. And so most people I work with don't use a ton of meal prep companies. They might use it intermittently, but they end up really just seeing that it can be more empowering and honestly easier in the long run to just learn how to cook your own food. Okay, so personally, I like to grocery shop once a week and prep some of my ingredients, like some of my meat, maybe do some roasted veggies ahead of time, or do a big soup or an egg bake. And then I also use some prepared ingredients, possibly like a rotisserie chicken or turkey sausage, fruits, breads, right, nut butters, things that I can just buy and then quickly assemble into my meals. So I commit to having a plan in place each Sunday so I feel ready for the week ahead. Some weeks I still get off track, but I know I'll get a refresh each Sunday. And when I say plan, it can be quite flexible, something I just quickly jot down into my phone notes. Here's what I bought, here's what I'll make. We're good to go. Okay. So these are some of the resources and um, I guess women, guides, teachers, researchers, doctors who I have pulled information from for this book and much of my teachings. So the Weston A. Price Foundation has some really amazing nutrition information for hormone health. The book Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. My podcast with Dr. Katie Smith. Dr. Rhonda Patrick has some really great podcasts. Dr. Stacy Sims has really great book and information. And then Marley Rose Harris is the one who created the Clear the Fear process and that app that I love. Okay, let's get into macro hormones, insulin, and cortisol. Okay, so I call these the macro hormones because they are like two of the biggest hormones that, like the most powerful is how I should say it, the most powerful hormones in our body. And what's really cool is our lifestyle and our habits and our thoughts can influence them rather quickly. Okay, so I love this hormone hierarchy chart, which I believe I got from the book Fast Like a Girl. So I didn't put that on the last slide, but that's another book that I really love. And she does a really good job of explaining how the hormones are all connected and how when we can influence our oxytocin, which is our love hormone, our hormone of feeling calm, feeling safe, feeling nourished, feeling pleasure, we can shut off cortisol. Most of you know that cortisol is our stress hormone. I have another slide that's going to go into how we get cortisol production and how it can become out of balance, too much of it. But just know that oxytocin can literally shut off cortisol. So something as simple as spending time with the people you love, your friends, your partner, with your pets, doing a meditation, doing some gua sha or some self-massage. I totally believe that gua sha has been something that has helped me in my health, but I don't necessarily think it's just from the act of putting the gua sha on my face, but because it's really calming to me. It helps me wind down, it feels really good, and it helps shut off my cortisol at night so I can rest and recover better. Okay, so cortisol then influences blood sugar through our insulin hormone. The insulin hormone is like the one that really opens up the key, opens up the lock in the cell. Okay, so I'm going to show you with my hand here. Insulin's coming around. Here's our cell. It acts like a key, opens up the cell. So then glucose can come and get into our cell. Okay, so over time, if our cells are not responding to this insulin, we're not going to let the glucose into our cell. So we're going to have glucose building up in our bloodstream. And it's not going to be good because that's going to then get stored as fat, cause inflammation, so many things. Okay. So insulin then is really impactful on the rest of our sex hormones. So progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, all of those things that influence our fertility, our periods, PCOS, endometriosis, breast cancer risk, all of these things, sex hormones are very important, okay? So this is why your daily habits and your lifestyle and how you're thinking really, really matter and not just what you eat, okay? Because I could go and eat the same salad in a really high stress state and my body's not going to digest it and process it in the same way as if I eat that in a really calm, rested state. Okay. Same with if you go out and party in one night and you stay out till 2 a.m., you had 6 drinks, the next day your cortisol is going to be really high, your hunger hormones and blood sugar are really high. You're not going to process that same salad the same way you would if you would have gone to bed at 10 p.m. and gotten 8.5 hours of sleep. That's just how the body works. And as I said at the beginning, or maybe I didn't, I meant to say, you do not have to follow these things perfectly to get results. That is what is so freeing to me. And I am the walking testimony. So many of my clients are the walking testimonies that you can still have inconsistency in your life. You can be imperfect. You can still have the sweet treat and still apply these principles more often than not and get results. Okay. So the more you apply them, the better your results will be. But we have to live. We have to enjoy life. We have to travel. We have to do those things. Okay. So I have a few quotes here that I am going to read. The first one is from Christiane Northrup. Christiane Northrup. The most important key to a lifelong weight maintenance and vibrant health is knowing how to keep your insulin levels low. Low insulin and blood sugar are also keys to preventing and reversing the diseases associated with cellular inflammation. Next one is from Dr. Jason Fung, the author of The Obesity Code. He says, there is no such thing as a calorie deficit if our hormones are working against us. So just a reminder that the last thing to heal is going to be your sex hormones. Hormones are the flowers. So we need to attend to the garden, which is the rest of your body and how your body is processing stress and food and all of those things. We need to improve vitamin mineral status, make our nervous system feel safe, and develop habits like self-care, low glycemic eating, strength training. Together, these things will help regulate insulin, our fat-storing hormone, and cortisol, our stress hormone. But before you get too overwhelmed, take a breath. I promise it doesn't have to be complicated. Start here with learning about one of the best habits to regulate the macro hormones. This habit is a low glycemic diet to keep blood sugar levels low. Okay, so we will get to that. I want to first dive a little farther into oxytocin, cortisol, and how to support those things. Okay, so the HPA axis can oftentimes be the problem. The quote I have on this page is, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. Your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis connects your brain and stress hormones. It triggers the release of cortisol which impacts body systems, including the heart and the ovaries. The HPA axis in women is extremely sensitive to calorie restriction, exercise, and fasting. I also have on there that environmental stressors. So if you are in traffic or there is a scary storm coming or there's a pandemic, right? These things in our environment, as well as fear, anxious thoughts, and critical thinking are some of the also, and when I say critical thinking, I don't mean like critically thinking about a problem, but like criticizing yourself, right? Self-loathing, negative thinking, poor self-worth, those types of thoughts and patterns can also activate the HPA axis and stress hormones. So this is one of the common reasons that you will hear people say, like when they were going through a really toxic relationship or a divorce, they had a lot of health problems come up. They felt really burnt out, right? They just did not feel good because their HPA axis was destroying their body and their hormones. Okay. So once the cortisol is signaled to the adrenal or the brain signals to the adrenals, those signaling processes can take up B vitamins, vitamin C, sodium, potassium. Then we produce the cortisol. And cortisol can actually pull from some of our hormone precursors that would be going towards progesterone. So progesterone is a really important hormone. It's required to have a healthy pregnancy. It helps you to have healthy heart health and bone health and brain health. And you have to ovulate to actually produce progesterone too. So that's another one of the reasons that I really work hard to educate women about the risks of hormonal birth control and not having ovulation and not having progesterone production. Um, and so, yeah, the cortisol can also lead potentially to increased muscle breakdown, so making it harder to build muscle. And we know muscle fuels our metabolism. And then it can lead to increased blood sugar. So, because cortisol causes the liver to release stored glucose into the bloodstream to have energy available for the cells, even if you are not over consuming carbs, stress may lead to unhealthy blood sugar fluctuations and over time insulin resistance. Okay, so cortisol can also contribute to anxiety, increased cravings, brain fog, poor focus, PMS, irregular cycles, and irregular appetite. Okay, so one of the best ways to manage your cortisol, along with exercise and sleep, is to address the subconscious mind, in my opinion and clinical experience and personal life experience. This has been so, so powerful. And I consider this to be not just a spiritual and emotional practice, but also a mental physical practice. It can kind of touch on all four of those components because when you're doing subconscious mind work, usually you are um, resting and you're sitting, you're thinking, right? You're resting your body. It's a good time to recover, to get into your parasympathetic nervous system, to chill your body out, right? You're also using your mind because usually you have to learn. You have to learn about what are these things going on. For example, for me, one of my subconscious blocks was around alcohol. I felt like it was something that I really needed in my life, was really fun, was really giving me a lot of value. And once I learned and I read books understanding the mechanisms of how alcohol was actually impacting my body, that helped me to be a little more open-minded to do this work. But emotionally and spiritually, what we are really doing with subconscious mind work is we're clearing these 5 soul wounds. And some of us don't have all of them in the same way. We definitely have them all in different ways. But usually we all have at least 2 of these, maybe more. And those are abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, injustice, and rejection. Okay, so the soul wounds. And I again learned this from Marley. There's been other books written on these. I'm happy to share more of like where we got this information from, but um the soul wounds are something that can be imprinted on your nervous system from a very young age. So your subconscious mind and your nervous system are doing a lot of developing in the years of 0 to 7. Okay, so even if it wasn't something that you maybe remember happening, it can imprint your nervous system. And the goal of your subconscious mind is truly just to keep you alive and keep you safe. Okay, so if you think of it like in caveman days, if you were a child and you saw somebody eat a berry and then spit it out because it tasted really bad or was really toxic, you're going to remember, don't eat those berries because they are toxic, right? Someone's probably going to tell you. Or the more simple one to explain is you touch fire. Okay. As a child, you touch fire, you remember, oh, that was really painful, it really hurt. So now anytime you get near fire or something hot, you have that same memory. Okay. So the same thing can happen around abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, injustice, and rejection. You can also acquire more wounds throughout your life for sure. Like when you start going through adult relationships, you start learning new things in your career, right? You start having financial problems. You can really deepen these wounds. But what's important to know is that it's not your fault that you have these and that they are so ingrained in you, but it is your responsibility to become aware of them and learn how to address them and clear them, okay? Because it's really this science behind manifestation and prayer and learning how to attract your highest self and life when you can apply this, okay? So this is not a full course on this topic, but I want you to have some quick journal prompts to go through to be able to start working with this process in your health, okay? Around food, around fitness, around your body image, around money, those types of things that will really influence your cortisol day to day, and just get started. Freaking get started, okay? Start to see it for yourself. The more you think about this stuff, the better it becomes. And the more you're able to practice it and get into some of those deeper wounds. Okay. So I do, like I said, I love the Higher Self app. You're able to pay for that app is like $20 a month and you can listen to recordings. I also have a recording of the Clear the Fear process, which is this meditation process that you can go through to clear a fear and figure out what the memory is that caused that. I also do live examples of this process every month in my Strong Heart community. So check that out if you would like to see some live clearings. Okay. So again, we want to really eliminate all self-blame from anything in our health, right? I would much rather you choose this path of feeling empowered with what you can actually do, no matter where you're at financially, no matter how much time you have, no matter how old you are, become empowered with what you can do rather than blaming yourself, blaming the medical system, blaming the government, blaming your parents. That does nothing. That does nothing. And it only produces more cortisol and more problems. Okay. So, um, yeah, so there's many, many factors that can influence specifically metabolic health, which again comes back to that blood sugar and body composition piece. So on one side, I think of our lifestyle, those things we have more control over, our food, movement, daily habits, healthcare choices, right? Like, are we going to decide to monitor blood work and monitor data on a Whoop? Are we going to decide to go to an acupuncturist? Those things are more in our control. Whereas things out of our control are our genetics, our environment, right? If we have, right, if we don't have access to nutritious food, which is for sure reality for some people. I've been through those eras of being post-college and being extremely broke and having to really minimize how much I could spend on food, but still being able to apply these principles. I promise you can. But past trauma, right? Like what happened to you in your childhood was not your fault. You know that. Don't, yeah, don't blame yourself, but know that you may have deeply rooted soul wounds from that. World and life events, like being constantly overstimulated. Again, that's something that a lot of us just kind of grew up with feeling is normal to constantly be around technology. And now we have to know that we can set boundaries around those things. We can take a step back and do breaks from technology, social media, and get into nature. And then genetics, of course, too, can play a role. Okay. So I do want to quickly highlight the MTHFR gene as one example. So this gene is held by about 40% of the population, and it leads to a cellular process called methylation being not very good. If you have MTHFR, you may not be methylating nutrients very well. However, other things can also pile on top of having this gene and make your nutrient status even worse. Okay, so just because you have the gene doesn't automatically mean you have problems from it. But it's something we want to be really aware of, and that's why I usually test for methylation indicators, and sometimes we'll even test this gene for my clients so that they can be aware and keep an eye on those nutrients, because it can be really, really impactful on cardiovascular conditions, neurological conditions, mental health, fertility, and PCOS. Okay, we are going to take a little pause here and get into blood sugar in our next video.